So I'm Olivia Hansen, and it is my pleasure today to introduce Christine Morgan. Christine will first be with us with a video presentation, and then she'll be with us live from London, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss her topic with her and do live Q&A. So Christine is president of Lucis Trust, and as many of you know, this is the global mother organization founded by Alice Bailey in the 1920s, and it advances today the books and teachings of the Tibetan Dwal Kul. So Lucis Trust has three headquarters, London, New York, and Geneva. And Christine came to the London headquarters in 1997 from South Africa, and then later became the international president. So Christine, her talk today will be on the dynamic power of goodwill. And some of the people from Lucis Trust may be watching us on live streaming, which would be wonderful. So please join me in welcoming Christine Morgan. Thank you.
Hello everyone at the Seven Ray Institute and the University of the Seven Rays. It's wonderful to be able to link up with you in this way through the ethers and to be part of the conference this year. I bring good wishes from all of us at the Lucis Trust and hope that your conference is brimming with the energy of goodwill, as I'm sure it is. Olivia has asked me to speak about the nature, the essence of goodwill, and about the work of World Goodwill, which is involved in during these interesting and challenging times. I'm sure we'd all agree goodwill is a fundamental requirement of humanity in this transition period, as there's only a decade left of the stage of the forerunner, that phase of activity in which the new group of world service is preparing human consciousness to meet the challenges of the new and increasingly more powerful acquiring energies of the future. For goodwill is not only fundamental to right human relations, it's also a safeguard. The aura of the human kingdom needs to be permeated with goodwill to safely distribute the potencies of the new age as part of the divine circulatory flow. And we all know what happens when incoming energies are not effectively distributed. It leads to overstimulation, congestion, and disease. And goodwill offsets this by creating a network of right relationships between all members of the human family, so that it is functioning as a healthy, integrated organ of distribution within the body of the Logos. Goodwill's one of those over-familiar words that's been bandied about for a long time without attention paid to the dynamic power that is indicated by its name. It seems to be generally thought of as a kind and cheery demeanour, the character of a person who gets on well with others, who always has something nice and complimentary to say and is warm, gentle and accommodating. However, behind its inoffensive facade hides much greater depth of meaning and power, a tremendous force capable of igniting the world with the spirit of relationship. Breaking the term apart into its components of good and will holds the key to preparing human consciousness for the appearance of the Aquarian Christ. For he will be using the dynamic will aspect of love on his return, and the will is little understood by humanity. An inkling can be gained by taking the two terms goodwill and the will to good into meditation, placing them imaginatively side by side in the mind, and simply observing the words in juxtaposition. It can be seen after a while how simply by moving the component word will from the end of goodwill and placing it in the front to make will to good completely alters its dynamic and the quality of the energy lying behind the word symbol. The will to good is a driving power, a directional force that embodies the purpose of the Logos. And it's the motivating force behind the divine plan, an aspect of the essential love of the solar Logos that is in search of immediate and direct expression. It has an irresistible, dynamic immediacy that is electric in nature and flashes out in purposeful activity like a sustained lightning bolt spanning the heavens. Goodwill, in turn, is a reflection of this power, a demonstration of the will to good at a lesser, safer voltage, and it's summarized as being as much of the energy of love that humanity is able to express at this time. While we're all probably aware of the meaning and power of the term will, we should also consider the term good, which on the surface seems such an innocuous little word. It's traced back to prehistoric Germanic roots, and the word gath meaning bring together, the source of the English gather and together. And this takes us into Pythagorean territory, for this great philosopher designated the Creator, the source of everything, as the good, because through the scheme of evolution, he is gathering everything back into himself and so bringing together. The evolutionary process could therefore be simply yet accurately defined as the progression of good. From this perspective, the universe is made up of successive gradations of good, with matter at the lowest end of the scale and spirit at the highest. And the developing state of harmony between them, the area of resonance, can be defined by the term beauty. The word beauty goes back to the form of Old Latin related to the word bonus, meaning good. And so for something to be truly beautiful, it has to be good in the spiritual sense. From a philosophical point of view, the soul of anything is by definition beautiful. It is beauty itself, the point of tension between unity and diversity, and the interface between the manifest and the unmanifest. And as that which is lower in the evolutionary scheme approaches that which is higher, the resonance and therefore the beauty steadily increases until this mediating principle disappears, having served its linking purpose, and the two levels are fused into one. This harmony of motion creates an opening between the inner and outer worlds, through which beauty enters as a flow of light, carrying the life of that which is greater into that which is lesser. And beauty, therefore, is a rejuvenating power, as a window into another world, and it lifts the focus out of the ordinary towards a greater degree of good. We are familiar with the power of simple words such as will and love, but words like good and beauty also have deep meaning when their etymology is researched. Indeed, to express these simple words is all that is required of us at the end of the day. And you may recall the Tibetan commenting that the outstanding need of the Church is to relinquish theology, to let go of all doctrine and dogma, and to turn upon the world the light that is in Christ, and so demonstrate the fact of Christ's eternal livingness and the beauty and the love which it can reflect from its contact with Him. These are truly inspiring words that summarize the nature of esoteric service, to simply reflect the beauty and love of Christ through contact with Him. And this, to me, is the essence of goodwill. So armed with a fresh perspective on the power that simple words can have, we can begin to understand goodwill at a more profound level, in the same way that the great spiritual philosophers down the ages have, Pythagoras being one of many. Another great philosopher, Lao Tzu, demonstrated his understanding of the power that the simple words we have been considering represent, in the statement, "When you extend goodwill in every direction, regardless of circumstances, you begin to see that we are all one." The words, regardless of circumstances, are important, for they contain the idea of goodwill overcoming adversity, of being an all-conquering power, pushing relentlessly forwards towards the goal, regardless of obstacles. This is particularly true of the will to good, with its extra charge of first-ray energy, a driving force that has been mobilized down the ages by all the great orators and statesmen. This is the dynamic power that propels ideas forward on a fiat of the will, straight into the hearts and minds of the public. And as it moves towards its goal, it is patient, persistent, and in the end, irresistible. And Winston Churchill encapsulated its force in the following well-known words: "In war, resolution. In defeat, defiance. In victory, magnanimity. In peace, goodwill." This is an interesting and powerful insight which demonstrates a real understanding of the will in the drive towards peace. Churchill understood it in terms of persistence and patient, dogged persistence. Great leaders, like Churchill and Roosevelt, demonstrated the will to good in a period of dire crisis for the world, when the will was urgently required to avoid catastrophe for the human family. And it was to help offset the evil that eventually precipitated onto the physical plane for a second time in World War II that World Goodwill was set up by Foster Bailey under the impulse of the Tibetans' ashram. The main work of World Goodwill is educational, and it incorporates information from the ageless wisdom teachings on aspects of the divine plan that are seeking manifestation on the physical plane, through the new world religion, through education, science, politics, economics, and so on. In fact, all areas of human expression. It is spiritual vision that World Goodwill is seeking to bring to the attention of humanity in suitably clothed language. In addition to its support of the United Nations and its Goodwill meditation, it promotes creative thinking on world problems and publications on contemporary themes. And it encourages the worldwide formation of Goodwill groups to participate in its educational programs. Most of these groups, which operate independently of World Goodwill, participate in meditations at the time of the full moon. World Goodwill offerings include a course on the problems of humanity, occasional commentaries where specific topics are discussed in greater depth, drawing upon spiritual principles and concepts. And World Goodwill produces regular newsletters on contemporary themes, which are translated into all the main European languages, and distributed worldwide to people of goodwill. And the latest have centered on the United Nations International Year of Light. Other topics have included sharing the earth, freedom and spiritual security, the air that we breathe, a culture of peace through interfaith harmony, the art of communication, and the spirit of money and the divine circulatory flow. The mobilization of goodwill and the stimulation of an enlightened public opinion are therefore at the heart of world goodwill. Not only does it seek to do this work objectively through publications and meetings, but it also encourages meditation on goodwill, and interested individuals and groups are encouraged to use meditation to strengthen goodwill energy in the world. But above all, what is needed is the application of goodwill in thought and deed, and expressed in daily life by millions of people all over the globe. This is a realistic goal too, for we see goodwill expressed more and more by the general public, in line with the goodwill affirmation, which is found in World Goodwill's formula for world peace and progress, which states that the energy of goodwill is the active principle of peace, justice, and progress for all. And this is followed by an affirmation of intention. To practice goodwill in all relationships, daily affairs, and in attitudes and actions towards other nations, and to support and cooperate with those in positions of influence and responsibility who use goodwill and reason rather than force and coercion. These statements are very simple and clear, but they are exactly those things that can be difficult to apply, as they rely on the unlearning of prejudice, criticism, and judgments. And despite the inspiring growth of goodwill in the world, there is still a huge gulf to bridge before we can truly have a world of goodwill, where conflict, hunger, and inequality are defeated. While human consciousness is steadily unfolding and goodwill is being expressed by an increasingly enlightened public opinion, this is juxtaposed with the terrible world news that is broadcast into our homes each day, relaying genocide, sex crimes, fraud, greed, fanaticism, and sadistic cruelty. It is as if all the energy pouring into the planet is just too much to bear. It's said that good always draws evil to the surface to be addressed. And if this is so, we are really living in the crunch time, a huge planetary cleansing period. Humanity in general is still very much focused on the desire nature, and we can see the degree to which it is being stimulated by simply looking at how our world culture has become homogenized. The cult of celebrity is still very much with us, and the hedonistic lifestyles that accompany it. All this world crisis and tension, all this energy and activity and change, makes me wonder to what degree all this planetary stimulation is being accentuated by the use of the Great Invocation. A very interesting statement made in the Alice Bailey teachings is that the primary result of the correct use of the Great Invocation, as far as humanity is concerned, is acceleration. And although the statement was made about the first stanza of the invocation that was given out, we can assume much the same applies to the last stanza, which is the Great Invocation which we are all familiar. Clearly, the Great Invocation is a powerful tool, and there is much to be said about its significance and its use. While it's an instrument for evoking light and love, it's also an instrument for evoking power, the power of Shambhala. No wonder then that one of the first effects, as far as humanity is concerned, is acceleration. World Goodwill has set about translating the Great Invocation into over 70 languages, so that it can be used widely and steadily as a prayer for all humanity. And one of the primary objectives of the invocation is to bring about a synthesis in human thinking, which has been lacking. As light streams forth into the minds of men, the divine plan will be more widely sensed and the will to good more widely desired and invoked. And this current period of acceleration and intensification is a temporary stage, and all the crises that are coming humanity's way are developing discrimination and repolarizing the mass consciousness towards the plane of mind and spirituality. As it proceeds, the age of uncontrolled acceleration should steadily be transmuted towards the soul and an age of synthesized rhythm and ritual. One of the most important developments towards this new age of stability are the number of world conferences taking place that are promoting world unity and right international relationships. The outstanding example is, of course, the wonderful work carried out by the United Nations, and World Goodwill is an NGO, and currently the World Goodwill at the UN blog and Facebook pages are shining a light on a very significant process that's taking place at the UN and due to culminate in September this year with the formal declaration of Sustainable Development Goals for the future. And these goals reflect the vision of the plan as it's taking shape at the UN. It's a vision of goals that can feasibly be achieved by governments and peoples during the next 15 years, if energies of goodwill are sufficiently mobilized and empowered. The blog and Facebook pages share news and commentary on this important development. It is a focus for World Goodwill because never before have governments and organizations of people of goodwill been so focused on defining what can be achieved on the path towards right relations and how it can be achieved in freedom and through a multiplicity of actions. We can work together as students of the ageless wisdom to hold this process in the light of the divine plan, and to do so with focus, clarity, and spiritual tension. We can bring the vision of future possibilities into our meditations, our triangles work, and the livingness of our spiritual lives. And both the New York and Geneva offices attend briefings at the UN, and both are participating in meditations there, working to seed the Aquarian spirit of goodwill. The world conferences held by the UN are tremendous examples not only of goodwill, but also the will to good, as the UN leads the way forward for humanity through the sheer power of vision. World Goodwill has launched an initiative called the Cycle of Conferences to stimulate this and nurture the fiery seed of the will to good that is found at the heart of the world conferences taking place today.
Today, we are being tested. In all we do, let us send a clear message. There can be no peace without justice.
Cette planète, nous devrons sans doute
I refuse to accept that view.
pioneira e visionária.
Brasil renova o seu compromisso.
Feminicídio.
The Cycle of Conferences was inspired by some passages from the book The Externalization of the Hierarchy by Alice Bailey. And written at the end of the Second World War, it speaks of a powerful first-ray activity swinging into action. The Christ, as the leader of the forces of light, empowered the ashrams of the masters upon this ray to strengthen the hands of all disciples in government and politics, to enlighten the various national legislatures. And this means that each of the coming world conferences, and there will necessarily be many, will have a far greater and extensive effect than would otherwise be the case. The subjective empowerment of this work through the invocation and direction of the will is a vital service that can be given at this time. And it's summed up in a passage from the book The Rays and the Initiations. It is absolutely essential that the will to good be unfolded by the disciples of the world so that goodwill can be expressed by the rank and file of mankind. The will to good of the world knowers is the magnetic seed of the future. The will to good is the father aspect, while goodwill is the mother aspect, and from the relation of these two, the new civilization based on sound spiritual lines can be founded. Two aspects of spiritual work must be nurtured in the immediate future, for on them the more distant hope of happiness and of world peace depends. The new group of world servers must be reached, and the will to good developed in them, and the masses simultaneously must be reached with the message of goodwill. So inspired by this, World Goodwill's Cycle of Conferences project is a global meditation initiative open to anyone who signs up to receive notifications by email, to participate in a visualization to help spiritually enlighten the atmosphere in which world conferences vital to humanity's spiritual progress depend. The divine will is now at large in the world, breaking down selfish and materialistic patterns of thinking and causing destruction where resistance is found. The synthesizing aspect of the will is simultaneously active, as witnessed by the thousands of NGOs and charities that have sprung up. The number of conferences taking place has dramatically expanded to include not only the political field, but all departments of human thinking. This cycle's work involves group invocation of the divine will, and its direction as the will to good in the build-up of selected conference, preparing in advance the right spiritual atmosphere in which it can take place. And the work of this group imaginatively projects a lighted seed of will energy and develops it into a pulsating heart center, radiating the light, love and power of the great invocation throughout the event and all participants. Through visualization, this preparatory nucleus of light can frequently be brought under the gaze of the mind's eye, and its inner fire fed with ideas resulting from meditation upon the topic that the conference is focusing upon. And many people doing this in preparation for the event create streams of living will energy that connect to the thought form, its inner light being fanned into the flame of synthesis by the group gaze. In this way, a potent group thought form is built, wielding a powerful influence. The conferences chosen by the Cycler Conferences are diverse, and they have included the Rio +20 UN Conference on Sustainable Development, the Parliament of the World's Religions, the Cocoon Climate Change Conference, the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, the World Economic Forum, and the World Social Forum. Cycles places an annual focus on the World Economic Forum in Davos, which some people may find a little surprising. The World Economic Forum is sometimes portrayed by the media as little more than a talking shop for powerful corporations and the vested interests of the business world, which to a degree is of course true, but it's also a place where the voice of goodwill from civil society attempts to make its voice heard. Where leading members of NGOs and charities, philanthropists, and famous activists from pop culture attract some of the limelight, and where there is a gathering of so many world leaders and other influential people, the hierarchy are likely to be working behind the scenes. And the aim of the Cycle of Conference initiative is to act as an intermediary to help channel the will to good from the hierarchy into the proceedings to strengthen the hands of those members of the new group of world servers who are working at the coalface, so to speak. As an illustration of this, a couple of months ago, a member of the House of Lords came into the library of our offices in London, and he had secured his place as a life peer in this unelected upper house of Parliament through his successful achievements in business. He told me that he has always been seeking to bridge towards the good which he senses in himself and the person he is in his everyday pursuits. He mentioned that he is involved in an inter-party parliamentary group which practices mindfulness each week. Mindfulness sessions have been introduced to Davos, and this Lord is one of many other servers who is quietly wielding his influence at these big forums and helping to bring about change. And these are the sort of people who need our meditative support. And so we see goodwill is at work in the world in all places and manner of ways. Goodwill is not always immediately apparent, especially to those who only understand it in terms of gentle kindness and warmth. A few years ago, World Goodwill posted a blog of events and activities in the world, which illustrated goodwill or love in action. This presented quite a challenge because goodwill is so much more than the many acts of charity that we thankfully see daily in every walk of life. In addition to this familiar aspect of goodwill, there's also the increasing clarity that it brings. Through goodwill, opposing points of view come to light, revealing those cleavages or divides that need to be bridged. And there's a wonderful example of this at work in the birthing of Zimbabwe's constitution, which took a committee of cross-party parliamentarians years to produce. Such were the obstacles thrown at it. When finally complete, it was described by someone involved in the process as a healing for the nation, and it was only accomplished thanks to the understanding, goodwill, and even friendship which grew between those involved and towards the government official who was driving the process. Opposing views were reconciled and led to the need to put aside differences when it became clear that the Constitution was a greater goal and duty to which they were all committed to realize. Such displays of goodwill from the heat of difficult relationships and points of contention provide the opportunity for consciousness to spiral forward so that harmony may be found at a more inclusive level. It brings the will into play and resonates with Christ's statement that he comes bearing a sword. It is this sword of goodwill that cuts through the dross and draws a clear distinction between right and wrong, between greater and lesser principles, so that choice can be made. Goodwill emanates from the center humanity and therefore is a form of intelligent love which requires discriminative application. Goodwill is above all an attitude which conditions thinking and has application at all levels, individual, group, national and global. instead of focusing on seemingly insurmountable obstacles, such as a lack of resources, goodwill and its counterpart, the will to good, necessarily refocuses on the source and abundance of good, and energies are redirected towards the meeting of need. From spiritual training, we know that it is right effort that counts, and when this is present, need will inevitably be met. Whatever the circumstances, where goodwill is present, we will surely onward move in life, step by step, closer towards the goal. Thank you for listening.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very powerful ideas and thoughts about goodwill. So I am with Helena and Sheldon and Michael. Do you want to just step
Hi, Helena.
in? Michael Robbins saying hello.
Nice to see you.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Hi,
nice
Michael.
to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for the talk. Thank you.
So I am now going to turn this over to Sheldon and Helena, and we'll have some discussion and questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So just to announce to our group here, we're going to ask anybody who wants to ask a...
Yeah, I'm looking for the full screen.
Okay, anybody who wants to ask a question, I'm talking to people behind me now, but not to you, Christine, but please line up and back with me. So if a question pops up as you are listening to the conversation, please come join us and we'll have a chance to ask these questions. Christine, that was such a powerful presentation of both goodwill and will to good with the examples. I was moved in many different ways by what you were talking about. I'm just curious, just to kind of start the conversation, thinking about the cycle of conferences, a lot of the focus is on some of the great gatherings at the UN and the kind of support that people can give in relationship to that. We're monkeying with our microphone here, so we get this thing working well. Oh, that's okay, good. That's good too. Very good. Okay, I can stand up straight now. That's even better. Yes, that's good. Yeah. I'm just curious, you talked a bit about the new goals, the 15-year goals the United Nations is setting up, and to seeing that picture of all those voices speaking at the UN was very stirring, to me at least, I think to many here in the group. Are there any of those particular goals or the whole process that kind of keeps you more than hopeful, but expectant that we're going to see the kind of changes coming along incrementally, of course, that we want to see in the world today? So what's occurring to you as you kind of watch that process unfold?
Yeah, are you talking specifically about the MDGs and all the developments
Yes.
at the UN now?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
there's so much hope with those. Just having those specific goals, there's just so much to be done still, that having something specific set out over a number of years and then achieving some of them just took away the magnitude of the task somehow. And, they've cut down on poverty and primary school education for children is much improved, as well as health issues. There's, of course, a long way to go. But, just by having someone like the UN lay out those goals in that way, I think it does bring everything down to earth, so to speak. And the whole goodwill vision is behind those steps. The program of the UN is almost like the plan in action, the plan manifesting itself.
Wonderful. Last year, or was it the year before, Helena, we showed a video where Bono was talking about how far progress has been made on eliminating, you might say, extreme poverty for the lowest, people in the world. It was very exciting. We took a clip and made it into 10 minutes, but it was just a very stirring description of how far, this is particularly in the developing countries, of course, but how far progress has been made. So that kind of lights the fire, I think, to say that there is progress being made in spite of all the things we see on the news. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the news at the moment, with the migrant situation, particularly in the Mediterranean, I mean, it just goes on and on. And if you don't think of the bigger picture and how many people there are of goodwill and how many NGOs are doing such good work, you can easily drop down into a bit of despair about it. But in fact, a great deal of progress is being made. And in a way, Goodwill is maybe bringing these issues to the fore in the lead up to the reappearance.
Exactly. Yeah, we were talking last couple of days about, with focusing on the title of Living the Spirit of the Aquarian Christ, one of the quotes was the incomparable nature of goodness and the innate divinity in man, and trying to just say if we can focus on, realize that is in all of us, and it's already to some degree manifesting. It could be a huge upsurge of hope. And even here in the U.S., where, as you know, we have not been politically much oriented well toward the UN, at least on the certain political sides of things.
Did you say the UN?
Yeah, the U.S. has been somewhat, supportive majorly, monetarily. The press here about the UN has been at best modest. But just taking a look at what's going on and some of the successes has been terrific. Okay, somebody else want to come up and ask a question?
Sure, thank you.
Hi, Christine, this is Alexander.
Oh, hello, Sasha, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Here at
My
the conference,
pleasure.
we've been discussing and talking a lot about this current crisis and about the next 10 years of work of preparation, and particularly about the importance of the practical work related to the work of the triangles. And
Yes.
we see it as one of the most powerful instruments given by Decay for us to distribute the goodwill. And I know that
Yes.
Lucis Trust does a lot in this direction, and so can you tell us about how you see the importance of this work and what's happening now with the new initiative, which I know is happening now with the trust related to the triangles?
Well, triangles. Yes, of course. Well, I know that the University of Seven Rays is very involved in triangles too now, and it's just wonderful to have this combined outreach, and just to know that all the cooperating groups, from esoteric schools, but right down to people of goodwill, are becoming more and more involved in triangles. In a way, it's such a simple exercise that people either are drawn to it or not. And really the great invocation is behind it as a sort of power base. And anybody who enjoys visualizing and linking up and using light in this way, it's a tremendous force for good, because it's not political, it's not personal in any way. It's basically just in consciousness that you can build these wonderful triangles and networks and imagine them sparking up around the world. And recently we've started a webinar, which you may be aware of, once a week. And Kathy Newburn's very involved in that too. And, that's sparking a lot of interest. We did it originally to expand the network, to get new people interested. But a lot of people who are already Triangles members are very involved in that and just enjoy the thought of linking up with others at the same time. So, I think what's wonderful about Triangles is that as a network, it just keeps giving, and it's just so simple. It's just a radiation of consciousness, essentially. So it's really nice to see it spreading amongst other groups as well.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Leuna.
You have been like a real presence here today. We are deeply, actually profoundly grateful for your presentation. I have the trianglesoflight.org site, and I'm always referring them to Lucis, where so much is going on. It's really wonderful, the support you give to the people who are learning to use that great invocation in a triangle, knowing it's interlaced with triangles of people of goodwill all over the world, and to recognize the potential power to create the thought form that will then hover over humanity and influence great world decisions. Thank you.
Yes. Its power is really because it is a subjective service behind the scenes, and it's just wonderful for that very reason. Its simplicity, but its power as well.
I just wanted to thank you, and Lawrence was with us last year, as you know, and
Yes.
the fact that you all are with us in this way, it's a nice way to have this
I
kind
know,
of space bridge.
it's amazing. I'm
It is,
astonished to see everybody there. And
Yeah, so
it's
that's
wonderful.
Great.
Christine, I want
Hello,
to,
Michael.
hi. I want
Hi.
to thank you so much, and I want to say that I value very greatly the new and more flowing relation we have between our organizations and other organizations, which are all trying to promote the great work in a critical time. I believe we have to work together in
Sure.
full goodwill, in full will to good as disciples, and goodwill among our organizations. And I'm very pleased on behalf of the board to have you with us in such a direct. Your image here is
It's
being
amazing, isn't it?
broadcast.
Everybody keeps looking to the left of me. So
Well, you see,
I presume that's where I'm being beamed.
you're up there larger than life, and we're please love and goodwill to everyone at the Lucis Trust. Yes, there you see it. Perhaps you see it on there. You are okay. So I just wanted to express our gratitude to you and all members of the Lucis Trust for these ongoing communications, many times in the year, but also especially at the times of the conferences. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And I just want to say, too, that I absolutely agree with you that in this final decade of the Forerunner stage, as they call it, or as the Tibetan has called it, it is really good to see any barriers between esoteric groups dropping away now.
Precisely.
And just moving forward as one group, really.
Exactly.
One inner group, at any rate.
Exactly. Thank you
And
so much.
thank you so much for this
Yeah.
opportunity. We appreciate it very much.
Wonderful. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So gratitude once again to you, Christine. It's nice to see you
Thank
face
you,
to
Helena.
face. We've had wonderful emails back and forth in the organizing of this, and also deep gratitude to Olivia Hansen for
Absolutely.
organizing
Yeah.
this and sponsoring this.
Thank you, Olivia.
My pleasure. It's so wonderful with technology. Your presence really is so fully felt here, as well as your picture. So thank you so much, Christine, and I look forward to seeing you in London in June. Yeah.
In June, quite soon then. That'll be
Right,
wonderful.
yeah.
Look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much.
it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much. And there was one more question about how do people sign up
Oh, what?
for the global initiative? How do people sign up?
Oh, you wanted to know how to sign up? Hmm?
Yeah, for the newsletter.
Yes, it's an email group, so it'll be on the website. You could just email World Goodwill, and we'll sign you up on it. And it's not continuous. We sort of wait for a specific conference that we're going to focus on, and then send an email around with a visualization. And it is very powerful, and we'd love to have your cooperation with that and your participation.
Excellent, you have it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
And we're going to scan the camera one more time for you to see who is here. And we're also live streaming this, so there's other people in the other areas of the world that are participating.
Sure. Goodbye.